I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated. So here's 77, and if you guys recall, we were dividing this up. We were able to divide this up into 3 sections. There's the introductory section, the main parts of the chapter, the middle section, and then the final part, the conclusion. So in the first part, just so everyone remembers, we were comparing the Tao to archery. So the Dow of Heaven is like drawing a bow. That's to expand, to pull back on the bowstring. And the purpose for that is to make a shot, like so. So if you recall, there's a couple of things that go into archery. Number one, it's always at an angle. When you're shooting a distant target, you always have to angle it just right. So when the arrow is fired and it arcs to its target, it will hit the target exactly where you want it to be. You want to take into account the distance, the placement of your shot, and therefore you want to angle it either higher or lower. So that's one part of it. And the reason why that's compared to the Tao is because if it's too high, you have to lower. If it's too low, you have to raise it up higher. And the Tao is a balancing mechanism like that. The Tao is all about being just right, not too high, not too low. The other part of it is that you have to pull back the right amount. As you see this Mongolian gentleman does here, you have to pull back with the right amount of strength so that when you fire it off, it'll travel the distance that you want. If you don't pull back hard enough and you let go, it's going to fall short of your target, as you can imagine. And if you pull back too much and you let loose the arrow, it'll overshoot the target and land somewhere behind the target. So you already know how that works. You've seen the physics of archery. So with that, we can compare shooting the arrow to life. As you heard me talk about quite a bit for the last 2 meetings, we can talk about hitting a target as being equivalent to achieving a particular goal in life. So in the Tao, in the actual authentic Tao, we never shy away from having goals. We never shy away from achieving goals. So this is not the westernized Tao where it's all about the journey, never about the destination. In the actual authentic Tao, it's about both the journey and the destination. And the destination is not the ultimate destination. It's one destination among many. So achieving a goal in life, that's one of the many goals that you have. It could be a milestone. If it's a journey, it could be a stopping point to rest, to recuperate before you go on the next leg of your journey. So when you're aiming too high, that's equivalent to having a goal that's not realistic. But if you aim too low, you are setting up something for you that is way too easy, that is not worthy of you. If you are drawing back the bowstring and expanding the bow, so to speak, you are gathering, accumulating energy and power to get something done. So if you are pulling too much or too little, you are either going for an overkill, which is, not a good thing, or too little will be like a half-hearted effort. So archery maps exactly to the Tao, which is about just right, not too much, not too little. So as I mentioned before, there's quite a few erroneous translations that when it gets to the line that says, if it's not enough, you got to give it more. If it's too much, you got to cut back. They interpret that to the length of the bow string that you see here. So basically what they're saying is that if the string is too long, you have to cut it short. If it's too short, you have to extend it. Completely wrong. This is not about the making of a bow. This is about the act of pulling back the bow in order to shoot the arrow. It's about archery. It's not about the manufacturing of the equipment for archery. So I want to make sure everyone gets that clear. There's a lot of translators who don't really understand what the original is trying to convey. So that was part one. Part two is about how the Tao of Heaven reduces the excessive, adds to the insufficient, adds to the lacking, just like the example that you saw as far as the strength that you use in pulling back the bowstring to shoot the arrow, and also the angle of the firing arc, the aiming. It has to be, if it's too much, you got to cut back. If it's too little, you have to add to it. And when I say too much, too little, there, I mean that applies to the angle as well. If the angle is too extreme, you have to moderate it. That's the bottom line. Then it points out that people are not that way. People are sometimes contrary to the Tao. How so? Well, a lot of times we reduce that which is already lacking and add to that which is already excessive. This is exactly the same as when we talk about how in society the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. So we don't have a balancing mechanism where people who really need some help desperately receive that help on a consistent basis, and people who have too much, give away their excess. We just don't have that. Perhaps it's human nature. That's why it is said in line 10, the Tao of people is not so. Reduces the lacking in order to offer to the excessive. Some other examples I gave last time. The bandwagon effect, like when a sports team is on its way to a very dominant victory, suddenly it gets a lot of fans. People are jumping on the bandwagon. When there's a fad, when something becomes fashionable, suddenly people jump on the bandwagon and they're all wearing the same thing. So it's the same idea. It's the Tao of people, not like the Tao of Heaven. Offering to the excessive, you see that in celebrity culture. We live in a media-rich celebrity culture where the people who enjoy popularity, their stars are on the rise. They get even more celebrity. They get even more attention, more wealth, more fame, more love from more fans. That's us. That's human beings. So then the last part is what we're going to focus on today. The last part, the conclusion, is what I think we can finish. We can finish off today. It's about the Dow of Giving. So who can offer their excess to the world? Only those who have the Tao, those who understand the Tao. So there's a specific way to give in the Tao. So that's what I want to focus on. Oftentimes, when you practice and cultivate the Tao, you will find yourself thinking in ways that are different from everyone else, from other people out there. And sometimes it can be the very opposite. So this is the reason why last time I offered the idea that when it comes to the American pastime of sports, everybody is rooting for a particular team. You get together with your friends, you watch the Super Bowl. There's some food, there's something to drink, maybe beers, of course, and then everybody has a good time. And everybody claims a team. I'm rooting for blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, the New England Patriots. No, I'm rooting for this other team. Or if it's, basketball, yeah, the Golden State Warriors, this and that. People flock to those teams. And so here's what I do myself. So I am not suggesting anything that I don't do. When people ask me what team I root for, I don't go by the city where I live, and many people don't. I remember when the Dallas Cowboys were dominant, people from all different states, all different cities were rooting for the Cowboys. And yeah, certainly the teams that I just mentioned, the Patriots, they attract fans from all over. Golden State Warriors, they definitely attract fans from all over the United States. So I don't base it on the city where I live. And some people will be critical and say that no, you gotta back the team of your city. And I'll say that no, a lot of people don't do that. I don't particularly prefer the team in my city over any other team. Instead, what I prefer to root for is the underdog in every contest. It's just that sometimes it's kind of hard to tell, which team is the underdog when they're evenly matched. But regardless, there are situations when one team is clearly the underdog and the other team is the dominant party. And I root for the underdog because most of my friends will be rooting for the dominant team, the powerful team. And I say that when the powerful team wins, it's expected. There's no surprise. They're just crushing their enemies, their opponents, just like they're crushing all of their opposing teams. So what's the fun of that? It's expected. It's even kind of boring. And I don't care for the bragging rights, like, oh, my team won. Well, it's not my team. It cannot be my team unless I'm actually a team owner. Then I can say it's my team. When you are saying quote unquote my team, you are being very one-sided. You are actually just deciding unilaterally that a particular team is yours. Well, do the team players, people in the team, in the back office, do they even know who you are? Of course they don't. They have no idea who you are. They see you as one of their many, many fans. And so when the underdog wins, it's a thrill. It's unexpected. It's exciting. It's an adventure. So that's what I hope to see. That's the reason why I want to be contrary to everyone and root for the underdog. So anyhow, that's all going back to the idea that when you see things in a different way, you start to think in a different way. So the Tao can help you do that. Perhaps you would decide to agree with most people, but if so, it's because you have decided that. You are not following everyone just because that's what everyone does. So the difference between the two is intentional and conscious decision making. You want to live your life as intentionally, as consciously aware as you possibly can. When you do, you'll notice most people are going through life without that intentional awareness. It's almost like they're sleepwalking through life. The Tao is about awakening to a greater reality, awakening to your power to decide every aspect of your life for yourself. The more you exercise that power, the better you get at it, and the more you are able to shape your destiny as you see fit. So you got to think about everything. You got to look at everything, and you got to take charge and decide for yourself. So this means, in the context of giving, that you don't want to be like a bandwagon person, a bandwagoner, jumping on the bandwagon. You don't want to, in the example that I gave last time was that, in high school, everybody's picking on, some nerdy, outcast kid. When that happens, I would say the most Tao-like thing you can is to befriend the person who is friendless. Not to join the party that's picking on the poor kid. So think about what happens oftentimes in high school or elementary school. As little kids, sometimes you get picked on. Yeah, and if you are not a member of a privileged class, you don't come from a wealthy family, you're not good looking, you're not athletic, wow, it's going to be tough. You get picked on. And perhaps, you are the member of minority, and therefore you get picked on for that. But then what can happen sometimes is that another kid joins the class, the new kid in town, new kid in class, and suddenly people gang up on him. Maybe he seems weak, maybe he is really studious, always has the answers. People don't like that. What a smart ass, so they pick on him. And then suddenly the kid that was picked on before, for whatever reason, background, ethnicity, whatever, suddenly he joins the side that's picking on the kid. And you might be thinking, well, but wait a minute, he knows how awful it feels to get picked on. So he should stand up for the kid that's being bullied, right? Wrong. That usually doesn't happen. Usually what happens is that the kid that used to get picked on, suddenly he wants to feel powerful. Suddenly he wants to be on the side that's doing the bullying instead of being bullied. And, perhaps he's also afraid that if he doesn't do that, that he'll be cast on the same side as the misfits, as the outcast, and be bullied at the same time. So that is what people do. That's not the Tao. The Tao is to stand up for the ones that are being oppressed, the ones that are getting the short end of the stick. Who can do that? Very few people. But those that actually do it, they are at peace with themselves, with their principles, with their integrity. They know they're living up to their own standards for themselves. So as they enter adulthood, enter society, they find that it's much the same thing. In our society, especially today, we see a nation divided. We see rifts between different groups. And recently, the news is all about that. So if I used to belong to a particular group that got picked on, that was discriminated against, and suddenly my lot has improved because, oh my goodness, suddenly we have a new target now. We have the immigrants, we have the Muslims. Let's all pick on them. No, that's what many people do, but that's not the Tao. Having been picked on before, having encountered discrimination and bias before, if you have ever had that experience, you know how that feels. You know how it's something that you would never wish on anyone. So you have to stand up for the people who are now getting all that discrimination, all that negative energy, who are now the butt of jokes, who are now being ridiculed, or sometimes even encountering violence. Well, if you join with the attackers, then you are like many of the people who have no idea what the Tao is. But if you choose to defend those who are weak, then congratulations. That's the right step on the path of the Tao. So it's the capacity to understand the Tao, the practice to apply it consistently in everyday living. Those who have the Tao are able to let go. This is about possessions. When you have too many things, the idea is to give away the excess, what you don't need anymore. And that's not the same as to give what you don't want. As I mentioned last time in the summary, what you don't want, that's your trash. Don't give your trash to other people. What you don't need, that's your excess. The excess, that's still useful, that's still good, you can give that to the people who don't have enough. That will be the Tao. And that's what it means. When they have more than they need, they share. So here's what I want to note about that. Here in the Tao, I want to be a little bit contrary from conventional wisdom and the familiar expression that we have all heard. Oh, he is so compassionate. He gives the shirt off his back to the homeless, to someone who doesn't have a shirt. And I say, no, that's a bad idea. Don't give the shirt off your back to someone who doesn't have a shirt, because then you are the person who doesn't have a shirt. So the idea is not to give when you don't have enough in the first place. That would just be, it's sort of like false modesty. That would be like a false display of compassion. You want to establish sufficiency. You want to establish a certain measure of independence before you are able to reach out to help other people. So when you give what you already don't have enough of, it can damage your ability to continue giving. Then you are of less value in terms of your ability to contribute to other people. So you want to build up your own value so that you can be in a very comfortable position to give to even more and indefinitely. So on that note, there's a story that I would like to share with everyone. It's a story that I have told before, but I feel that I can connect it to this particular slide and this last paragraph here. The story is about a conversation between a sage and his disciple. They studied the Tao for quite a few years, and it's the practice of the sage to once in a while give the disciple a question, a puzzle, something to figure out so he can test his understanding of the Tao. So one day, on this particular occasion, the sage says, okay, you are drowning. You find that there is an accident with the boat, and you are finding yourself facing a dilemma. Your wife and your mother are both drowning in the lake because they have no idea how to swim. It's a very deep lake. They will perish if you don't help them. So the boat has capsized, and you are faced with a choice, to save either your wife or your mother, and you have to save one of them first. You're not such a powerful swimmer that you can save both at the same time. Plus, where they are drowning, they are quite a bit of distance apart, so you won't be able to reach both of them in time. So the question is this: who will you save first, and why? And it's a trick question. So you have to decide on one of them, and then you have to decide on one person to save, and you have to give the reason for that particular choice. So first, the disciple thinks about it, and then the disciple says, okay, well, if the women are here, they're going to give me a hard time, but I'm going to give the answer to you, Master, that I'm going to save my mother first. And the reason is because she gave me the gift of life. So I owe it to her to save her life first. The Master says, wrong. That's the wrong answer. Try again. So the disciple thinks about it, and then after a while says, okay, well then I save my wife first. And the reason, Master, is because my mother represents my past. My wife represents my future. So I should let go of the past and, focus on the future. Therefore, I will save my wife first. Then the Master says, that is also the wrong answer. So then the disciple says, okay, well, in the Tao, Master, you have taught us that when faced with a choice, oftentimes it's a false dichotomy. If it's one or the other, we have to consider both or neither. So I will say both because they're both worthy of saving. And the Master says, no, as I mentioned at the beginning, they are pretty far apart, so you are not able to say both. And then the disciple says, well, in that case, the only answer left is neither one of them. I can't say my mother, I can't say my wife, I can say both, so I will save no one. Then the Master says, well, that is also the wrong answer. The first person you have to save is yourself. You have to establish safety, stability for yourself, so you are in a position to save them. So with yourself having established a position of safety, perhaps on top of the capsized boat or whatever the situation may be, then you will finally have to make a decision of who to save next. But the very first person you have to save is yourself. So, same idea when it comes to giving. You have to make sure that you are pretty well set up so that you have the stability, you have a platform that you can stand on, that you are able to then go from there, a position of strength, to save other people or to give to other people or to help other people. That's the same idea. And the master, the sage, did mention at the beginning of the story that it's a trick question. And it's a trick question because it seems to be presenting a choice between the mother and the wife, but it's really not. It's really about yourself. Okay, so moving on. There's more about the Tao of Giving, and so I want to cover one more slide. Here, you're going to see this image down here. Hopefully the resolution is sufficient. And I'm going to read this off to you in Mandarin, and then I will explain what it means. And that's probably all the time we have until we take a mid-meeting break. So take a look at this picture. As you listen to the Mandarin, I'd like you to put on your musician hat. That is, oftentimes people remark that the Chinese language, because it's tonal, it's based on different pitches, that it can sound musical. So I want you to pay attention to the rhyming scheme. This is actually 2 lines, and they rhyme. So I'll read them as two lines that rhyme, and you tell me if you can hear the rhyming, okay? So here we go. In Mandarin. 细水长流年年有，大吃大喝不长久。Once again. 细水长流年年有，大吃大喝不长久。Are you able to hear the rhyming? I'm going to assume that you are, and let me explain what these 2 lines mean. There's a comma here, and then there's a period here. So punctuation marks are definitely something that's being used in modern Chinese, modern Mandarin, all the time. So 细水长流, that's an expression. It's often used in modern Mandarin. 细水, 细 means thin, 水 means water. So thin water, what is that? Well, that's a small stream. A small stream. 长 means constant or long-lasting. 流 means flow. What's a constant flow, a long-lasting flow? And what's that got to do with thin water? Well, a small stream is something that can flow for a long time because it's not a torrent that will be exhausted after a big splash. So the small stream is flowing constantly, or flowing for a long time, or is long-lasting in its flow, or is flowing indefinitely. All of those are acceptable translations. So 细水长流, the small stream flowing indefinitely. 年年有, what is that? 年 is year, and it's repeated twice, means every year. 年年, every year. 有, to have. So if you have a small stream that flows indefinitely, then that is something that you will have year in and year out, or 1 year after the next, or every single year. Then we get to 大吃大喝. Again, that's a 4-character expression. 大 means big, or a lot, or huge amount. 吃 means to eat. And then 大, same thing, big or huge amount. 喝 means to drink. So a literal translation of that expression would be like big eat, big drink. But you probably have already figured out that it means to eat a lot and drink a lot, or to be a glutton, to satisfy your craving, to stuff your face, is what it's saying basically. 大吃大喝 is to drink a huge amount and eat a huge amount. Then 不长久, it can't last. It doesn't last. You won't be able to last a long time if you are wasteful, if you are stuffing yourself, if you are so incredibly stuffed that you are uncomfortable and very unhealthy, feeling very unhealthy. That is not the way to go. So here the expression 细水长流年年有, that's the Tao. That's about how you got to pace yourself, moderate your output so that you can keep going indefinitely. You can keep going for a long time. But if you go all out, 大吃大喝, eat up everything, drink up everything, you're not going to last. You're not pacing yourself. You are going to be exhausted. You are going to be so full, and you are going to cause yourself a lot of problems, a lot of issues. So once again, 细水长流年年有, 大吃大喝不长久. Remember, in order to be lasting, in order to enjoy life to the utmost, you gotta pace yourself so you can keep it going indefinitely. Okay, so on that note, it is now 11:26. So getting close. Let's go ahead and take that mid-meeting break. We'll take 5 minutes. When we come back, it should be something like 11:31, 11:32, and we will continue. Okay, fantastic. Let me get into the details of this particular this expression, 细水长流. So this applies to the Dow of Giving. So, what do I mean by the Tao of Giving? So, when it comes to the Tao of Giving, oftentimes the sages will use water as an example, as a model to emulate. So, the observation is that water is something that all living things require. So, if you look at a river, as the river is flowing through the landscape, it is nourishing, nurturing all the living things along the way. Those living things can be plants, insects, flowers, grass, trees, all kinds of plants. All the living things are benefiting from the flow of water. So the water is giving them the gift of life. But once it has done so, water keeps on flowing without sticking around to claim credit, to say, everybody look at me, I caused all these living things to continue on living, aren't I great? Okay, water doesn't do that. Therefore, the ideal in the Tao is to emulate the giving nature of water, to give, and then not try to stick around to claim credit. Number 2, to give with no strings attached. Oftentimes, I see people giving conditionally. I will give you blah, 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 if you behave, if you are good, or if you give me something back in return. So that takes it out of the realm of the Tao of Giving and it enters into the realm of transaction, value for value. I give you X for Y, and perhaps I'll throw in Z as a bonus, but there's an exchange. There's a back and forth. In the Tao, when you want to give, it's because it's the right thing to do. So you follow that natural impulse to provide for that which is inadequate or lacking. You are not doing so in the hopes of some kind of compensation, in the hopes of some improvements in your image, in the image that you project to society at large. So to give with no strings attached, you can tell it's a little bit different than to give, than the first one, giving without claiming credit. Giving without claiming credit means that you are giving without ego being involved. Number two, to give with no strings attached, it means that you have no attachments, you are not hung up on a particular thing, you are not making your help conditional upon something. And what about number three? Give what you can comfortably give. Here we come back to this, to 细水长流. We come back to the expression that the small stream can flow indefinitely. So give something that will not make a drastic impact on your ability to continue giving. Oftentimes, when people give too much, it is also something where ego is involved. The idea is that everybody look at me, I already don't have a whole lot, but I'm giving this much. That's how compassionate I am. I'm just that kind of guy. Okay, well, ego is involved. So in the Tao, giving has no ego involvement because all you're trying to do is to be like nature. What I've done here is that I've pulled out the characters 细, thin, small, 水, water, 长, long, 流, flow. A small stream will continue to flow indefinitely. Or you can also say flow for a long time. Or will flow constantly. All of those are the same idea. So that's the Tao. That which is congruent with the Tao will last. You see this in other parts of the Tao Te Ching. Whatever is against the Tao will soon perish. Whatever is with the Tao, that is the lasting thing. So, when we look at material objects, they seem solid, they seem permanent, we can hold them, we can touch them, we have them seemingly forever. But from a vaster, larger perspective, from the perspective of centuries or millennia, then you can see that these objects come and go. They exist, they are destroyed. So in the cosmic scale, in the cosmic scheme of things, where you measure in billions of years, something that lasts even, several centuries is only the blink of an eye in that scale. So it comes and goes, it doesn't last, it's impermanent, it's an illusion. It's like a candle flame that's blown out. One moment it's there, the next it's gone. So the Tao will always last. The Tao has been around forever, will continue to be around after you and I are long gone and forgotten. That which goes against Tao is transient, and that's the word I've been looking for, transient. It's impermanent, it's illusory. It's here, then it's gone. Transient. What a great word. Okay, let's keep going. So now I want to focus on line 15. We are getting close to the end of this particular chapter. So, sages act without conceit. This goes back to what I was saying about how the Tao of Giving has no ego involvement. Sages practice the Tao because it is the way, the natural way, and therefore the best way. It's the optimal way. It's the balancing way. It's the way of the equilibrium. It's the way that's just right. So it's because of that when they give, they don't think that this makes them special. So I want to be clear about this. Sages and Tao practitioners, Tao cultivators, they look at reality and they're clear on what they observe. They know that they are among the minority. So numerically speaking, when it comes to quantity, most people will think in the conventional way, and relatively few people will think in the way of the Tao. Hey, I wanna do a quick check on audio with everybody. Audio looks good on my end. As far as I can tell, I'm still broadcasting. Okay, fantastic. Thank you guys for the feedback. I need to double check every now and then. So looks like audio is good all around. It's possible that you can be having an internet connectivity issue on your end, and therefore, not hear my voice. But as far as most attendees can tell, we're still good. This particular iteration of GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting, we've enjoyed very high quality audio so far. We've not seen a huge amount of problems. Whereas previously, I think you guys all recall, sometimes it was good, sometimes not so great. Okay, for now, I think we're still good. Let's keep going. So the main point here to focus on is that because even though sages and Tao cultivators realize that there's not a whole lot of us around. I mean, that's just reality. Look around. There's not a whole lot of people who believe and think the way that you do. You think in ways that sometimes goes against the grain of society in general. Other people may not be able to comprehend why you think the way that you do. When you follow the Tao, you see things in a different way. And when you look at so by the way, when you look at the most recent post in Taoism.net website, it's actually about that. It's actually about how when you practice and cultivate the Tao, you begin to diverge from the norm. You begin to be different from the way that most people think. And one day you realize that the chasm between yourself and them has grown very wide and probably impossible to bridge. So when that is the case, other people are still going after all the things that, people normally go after without the Tao to guide them, material things, fame and fortune, various displays of wealth, prestige, etc. And you begin to not really care about those things. There are other things that are far more important, but they don't get that. They don't see why something that is so precious to them, to you, is appearing completely different. Like to you, you have a completely different attitude about what they're chasing after. The latest story is all about that. So back to this particular slide. Even though Tao cultivators recognize that they are among the few, they do not let that go to their head and to assume that they have some sort of superiority over other people. Because I know the Tao and you don't, then I am above you. I'm up here, you're down there. See the difference between us? That is not the way of the Tao. And the reason is because there's a compelling reason, positive reason for that. The reason is because the Tao is a journey that we're on, and indeed, everybody is on some kind of journey. So at some point, people will all go through the same thing, maybe not this lifetime, but at some point throughout the endless eternity, they will. So the fact that you are going through this process of learning now, good for you. But it doesn't mean that it's completely is something that other people will never have the chance to go through for themselves. They will. It's all just a matter of time. So, knowing the Tao of Giving, it doesn't make you special. All that you're doing is to do what nature already does. You are not superior compared to other people. Okay, moving on. And because you are not superior, not special, you're just doing what nature already does, you give goodness to others without inflating your ego. You don't see yourself as this incredibly great, grandiose benefactor of mankind. You're not the vigilante that saves people of Gotham City, etc. It's something that you do because it is natural for you to do them, because it's the right thing to do. So, nature, a balancing mechanism, therefore, you as a Tao cultivator, you also act in emulating that, reducing the excessive, add to the insufficient. That's what nature does, that's what you do. So, think about all the ways that people fail at the above. They don't do what nature does. They don't reduce the excessive. They hoard the excessive. And they don't add to the insufficient. They hold on to what they have without giving. So, one particular author was interviewing a whole bunch of people who are very affluent. And what he wanted to know was about their favorite charity. So, he was a little bit shocked that in this collection, this group of wealthy people, these millionaires, when he asked, what is your favorite charity? The most common answer from that group of people was, oh, my favorite charity is myself. I give to myself. So you can imagine he was encountering the Dow of people on that occasion. So that is, so I'm not trying to guilt trip everyone into having a favorite charity. I'm only saying that the Tao of people is not the same as the Dow of Heaven that we study. That a lot of people, when they have more, they just hold on to that and they accumulate a larger and larger pile. They do this until they die. And then that big pile is left behind, because that big pile can't follow them into the afterlife. Okay, so there's more to the Tao of Giving. Some of it can be rather subtle. So I want to highlight the subtleties for you, and again I want to share some thoughts that may be very unconventional, maybe against the grain for your consideration. You don't have to agree with me on all of these ideas that I present. The most important thing for me is that you think about it for yourself. Even if you disagree with me, I hope you just give it some thought, entertain a different perspective. That's what the Tao is really all about. So, good. This I already mentioned. Sages are like the river. The water nourishes the living things it encounters and moves on. That's it. It just moves on. It just goes on its way. It's got something else to do. It's got more places that it has to visit and flow to. Whatever has already benefited from the influence of the water, that's great. But that's behind you now. That's in the past. Just move on. So, line 16, achieve without claiming credit. This Tao means, and this is where we begin to get into the subtleties. Number one, no judgment on who should receive the benefit, who is or is not deserving. So, we see this in our society. For example, I have spoken to people who are very angry about other people receiving government benefits, welfare. So they call those people all kinds of names, but then it gets pointed out that they themselves belong to a group that is receiving social welfare from the government. Then suddenly the tone of the conversation changed and they think that's okay. Why? I mean, Social Security, government welfare, that's all from the same source and it's all giving to people in need, right? Wrong. It makes a difference to this very angry individual who the recipients are. Some people should, in his view, continue to receive social welfare. Why? Because they are quote-unquote deserving. You know, they've been working hard all their lives, and therefore now they're down on their luck, and they're very deserving, they should be receiving the benefits. The other group, the people he doesn't like, they're not deserving, they don't work hard. Well, how do you know they don't work hard? Well, he just knows that they are lazy, shiftless, they don't advance themselves, and it goes on and on like that. All I want to convey here is that to pick and choose who should receive the benefit, who should not, based on some kind of criteria, well, that's not really compassion. That's not really the Tao. So the Tao doesn't pass judgment, You deserve this, you deserve that, you deserve more, you deserve less. The Tao doesn't attempt to make judgment calls the same way that when rain falls, it doesn't make a judgment call on I should fall more on this patch of land and not on that patch of land, or I should water this beautiful flower over here in this garden, but not the weeds in the garden next door. Rain doesn't do that. Neither should human beings. Number 2, make no attempt to create a karmic debt. You create a karmic debt when you have a target, a recipient for your act of kindness, and you have clearly identified yourself as the benefactor, as the person who's doing the giving. So even if you say, you don't have to do anything to pay back, pay it forward. That's how great of a guy I am. Don't give me back anything. Well, you have still created a karmic debt. So from the Tao perspective, this is contrary to the teaching of Lao Tzu, because no one owes you anything just for being natural. You're just emulating nature. It doesn't make you great. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't, what I mean is, it doesn't make you a better person compared to other people. It doesn't make you superior to them. It makes you a better person in terms of improving yourself when you give in a spirit of compassion and harmony. So we got to be precise with language here. So for the Chinese, there's especially for the Buddhists, there's a specific way they talk about this. So in the Buddhist belief system, if you create a karmic debt, you are identified as the karmic giver and you have a karmic recipient, then that karmic debt has to be paid back. So it becomes contrary to the goal of Buddhists. The idea in practicing Buddhism is that you want to get off the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So the idea is to be free of it, free from the wheel of samsara, the wheel of suffering, and not have to come back in the world. That's the Buddhist way of looking at things. So the Buddhist masters will teach that when you create a karmic debt, you create the condition for which the karmic debt has to be repaid. So, if not in this lifetime, then in a future lifetime. This means whether or not you have attained a degree of enlightenment or perhaps close to it, you've got to come back. You can't get off the wheel of samsara. You have to come back to be the recipient of the repayment of the karmic debt. So that's not a great idea. So that's the way that it is described in the Buddhist tradition. So I want to reference that and give you another way to look at things. Number 3, no contrivance to be visible or anonymous. So here's the idea. You don't need to give by sneaking around. And you don't need to highlight yourself, put a spotlight on yourself when you give. Sages give without any need to draw attention, but if they happen to draw attention, they don't run away from attention. It's all about what nature does. So nature doesn't sneak around to put a little bit of rainfall here, and then when people notice, runs away. That doesn't happen. Nature does what it does without drawing attention to itself. Look at me, everybody, I'm raining right now. And it doesn't sneak around and hope that people don't notice. That's the way of the Tao. No contrivance to be highly visible, no contrivance to be completely anonymous. Both would be opposed to Tao principles. So this is what I mean by things becoming a little more subtle. You have to watch for all the different subtle ways of ego manifestation. And, I guess in fact, I can make it simple by saying that just be natural. But, oftentimes people don't really know what I mean when I say just be natural. So now here's a cautionary note. And this is a real life story. I know I have friends who are Tao cultivators, in Taiwan, here in the US, and sometimes they want to exercise their compassion and they want to give. So they seek a particular charity. So a lot of times when I speak with these friends who are Tao cultivators, I see that they are doing very well in life. They follow the Tao, so they enjoy prosperity. They enjoy material abundance. So they are not wanting for anything, so naturally they turn their thoughts toward what can I give? What's a good charity that I can get involved with? Then they forget about some of the ideas we talk about here, about the Dow of Giving. So then I have to be the person to break the news to them. Listen, it's great to be compassionate, but it's not so great when you must pick and choose the recipient. Is there a situation like that you guys may be aware of? I'm about to show you an example where that's the case, where you have to pick and choose a recipient. It would be better if you didn't have to choose who receives your kindness. Now, it's sort of like, you will encounter a whole bunch of beggars on the street, and then you point out to some of them and say, you. I give each one of you $1, the rest of you are out of luck. Later, that would not be the Tao. It would be better if you can work to the benefits overall without picking and choosing a specific individual. Number 2, this is what I talked about before from the Buddhist perspective. When you incur a specific karmic debt, you also create an obligation for that debt to be repaid, even if you don't want it to be repaid. Karma doesn't care. It's going to circle back to you no matter what. It's just like when you create a negative karma and you want to avoid the negative consequences, well, karma doesn't really care. It'll circle back and visit upon you that negativity triple in strength. Karma doesn't care. It's a mechanism. All right, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about this. This is a charity that my Tao cultivating friends, some of them have gone into, and I know them to be very compassionate people. So it was expected that they would get into a charitable cause like this. But then, and in case you're wondering what this is, it's a website that sponsors children from regions of the world that are suffering poverty or warfare. And so in this particular example, they have sponsored many children. So their money goes specifically to those kids, and those kids will write them letters and send them photos, etc. They see it as a very positive thing. It's a very common thing. They do this all the time. But I have to be the one to deliver the bad news, and I'm pointing out that it's great to be compassionate, but look, you are picking and choosing who should receive the benefits of your compassion. So looking at the website, waiting X number of days, my goodness, well, when you are a child, I guess you better be appealing and adorable and cute. God forbid you should be unappealing in some way in terms of appearance, not very photogenic, so then no one picks you. That is the problem when it comes to picking and choosing the recipient of your goodness. So, in comparison, I personally give to charitable causes myself, but what I want to do though is to not be specific in picking and choosing, but to support the organization who will do things, who will do engage in humanitarian activities that are badly needed in certain parts of the world. So, for instance, one of the causes that I support personally is Doctors Without Borders. Because they do the work that I cannot do. They go into these places, war-torn, disease-ridden, refugees, chaos, madness, and they do incredible work. They do amazing work, and I want to support that. I want to support that all day long. And I don't want to be in a position to say, this person ought to be saved, that person should not be saved, this person is more deserving than that person. That would not be the Tao. So this is what I mean by the subtlety in the Tao of giving. I understand sponsoring a child, a poor child, is very common. Many people do this, but I really gotta say, I recommend a different course of action. I recommend a different way to express the same compassion that you have. I applaud the compassion, but I gotta stick with the Tao. Excellent. Here we are at the very last line of 77. So I want to start out with a little translation issue. So let me break down the last 4 characters because these are relatively easy. The second character here means no. And the third character here means desire. So no desire means to not want, to not wish to do something. And then this character here, second from last character, it means to see something, to watch something, to observe something. In modern Mandarin, in this particular context in ancient times, this character is used in a different way. It doesn't mean to see, it means to be seen. Subtle, but important. And the last character, xian, it means wise, virtuous. So, these 4 characters together,
it doesn't mean that you don't want to see the virtuous or you don't want to see the wise. That's not what it means. That's not what the ancient context was. What it says is the opposite, that you don't want to be seen as virtuous. Or, look at the translation. They do not wish to display their virtue. They don't want to put their virtue or wisdom on display for everyone to see. Not to see virtue themselves, but to be seen. Why? Well, here we go. Those who wish to be seen as virtuous possess only the illusion of virtue. We see this everywhere in society. People want to display their virtue. There's a new expression now called virtual signaling, that people want to signal their virtue. Usually they do this by going online and, pop it on a soapbox and talk about how they support oppressed minorities. Now, they may still be quite discriminatory themselves, but they want to signal that there are certain groups they support because they're so virtuous. You can tell that the ego is definitely involved. So virtual signaling is the contemporary social media term for this ancient idea that people who are not truly virtuous, they try to display this illusion of virtue everywhere to everyone. Social media only makes that easier. But this is something that was done even 2,500 years ago when this was first written. So what about the complementary side, the flip side of that? Those who possess true virtue are not mindful of being virtue. They're not out to be virtuous. They're not intending to project virtue for others to see. So that's why they are virtuous without thinking about how virtuous they are. They are not intentionally virtuous, like I gotta be virtuous today, because they don't have to think about it. It's natural for them to be virtuous, so it's something that they do without deciding to do. It's something that they are without deciding to be. So my last comment on 77 is that the most important thing to all of us, hopefully you see yourself as a Tao cultivator. I see myself as a Tao cultivator. The most important thing for Tao cultivators is being true to themselves. So this is a call to action for you to be true to yourself. I know my ideal is that I must be true to myself. When you are true to yourself, then you realize that there are certain things that people used to regard as important, still regard as important, that fall by the wayside. What things? Well, the image that you project, the image that you cultivate in society about what kind of person you are. And, you want people to like you want people to think of you well and respect you and so forth. Okay, well, fine. We live in society. We have to participate in society. We have to get along with other people. But there's no longer an obsessive need to cultivate the image and to influence what other people think. Why? Because that is not as important as being true to yourself. Being true to yourself is first and foremost. Then the positive opinions of other people will follow naturally. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. So that's my comment on the final line of 77. If you have any questions about 77, please feel free to ask. I'm going to go on and do the paraphrase of this chapter. So, I had too high of an opinion of myself, and I thought that I began the practice of creating a paraphrase, that I came up with the idea pretty early, that it must have started back in chapter 20 or something like that. Well, I definitely overestimated myself. I think it was a manifestation of ego. When I actually checked the record, I realized that the idea did not occur to me until halfway through the Tao Te Ching. So it was like chapter 40 something when it occurred to me that it's a good idea to create a paraphrase. A paraphrase will convey the original in modern English. So the idea, the challenge is that even though we're now saying the original Tao Te Ching, the lines, the poetic lines, in modern English, the challenge is to stick as closely to the original intention as we possibly can. So I'm glad to report that people have given me positive feedback saying that the paraphrase is really helpful in understanding the chapter, and it acts as a kind of a summary all by itself too. So here we go. We're back looking at 77, the 3 sections. We will tackle the paraphrase one section at a time. The first one, as you remember, is all about archery. How do we hit that target? Well, the angle has to be right. The amount of strength has to be right. So how do we say that? Here's what I would suggest. Here's what I will offer. The Tao of nature is all about the right balance. This is reflected everywhere, even the art of archery. When you are about to fire an arrow, you have to aim by adjusting the angle, not too high and not too low. You also have to moderate your strength in pulling back the bowstring, not too much and not too little. You will hit the target if everything is just right. So, even in a paraphrase, we should not stray too far from the original. The original is a skillful use of the imagery of the archer to compare that to life, to walking the path of the Tao in one's life. Then, the second part continues on from there. The first part is about the Tao being just right. The second part talks about how the Tao of heaven is different from the Tao of people. Or I can say it another way, the Tao of nature is different from the Tao of people. Or I can say that as we build our civilization, increasingly we have strayed away from the Tao. We have departed from the Tao. Our lives become increasingly artificial. We have all these societal norms and rules that we follow and observe and become slaves to. We forget about what it is to be natural. Anyhow, the difference between the Tao of heaven and the Tao of people is about the approach to life, whereas the Tao of nature is a balancing mechanism. The Tao of people tend to the extremes. You got more? Okay, I'll give you some more. The more the merrier. You got less, well, I'm going to take away even more, so you have even less than what you did before. That's what we do. So how do we convey that in the paraphrase? Here's what I would suggest. From this, we can see that the Tao in nature is constantly reducing the excessive and adding to the insufficient. For example, ice melts and boiling water cools off. People often act in contradiction to this principle. They often take from the poor to give to the rich. So those who have little end up with even less, while those who have too much get more and more. Well, it's uncomfortable, but this describes, certain segments of our society. We definitely see that happening. So it is as if Lao Tzu was a prophet, understanding human nature, understanding how the world is going to evolve. So just to be clear, definitely in the original, there's nothing about ice melting. There's nothing about water boiling. That's why this is a paraphrase and not a translation. So the idea here is that when the ice is melting, well, that's temperature going toward equilibrium. Same thing with boiling water cooling off. It's working its way towards equilibrium. Okay, let's do the last part. Who can offer their access to the world? Only those who have the Tao. So, as you heard me talk about today, you want to be very cognizant. You want to be very aware of the fact that, frankly, there just aren't too many people out there that think the way that you do or can understand the way that you think. Nevertheless, that by itself, the rarity of it, doesn't make you better than other people. It doesn't make you superior to other people, because you're only being natural. So that's why you have to act without conceit. You have to give without claiming credit. That way, you don't put your virtue or your wisdom on display. So let's see if we can convey that in the paraphrase. Who can be different and give what they no longer need to those who need it? Only the few who know the Tao. They are the sages who act in accordance with nature. They give naturally without the need to satisfy their ego. They are truly wise and so have no need to display their wisdom. So that, I believe, is a paraphrase that sticks to the original meaning very, very closely. But now, as a paraphrase, in modern English, I think beginning to end, you would also find that this is a very easy way to comprehend the original meaning from Lao Tzu. Now, I would like to present to you the summary, the final summary for 77. It's about giving. And here's the question. What are some creative ways to give that need not involve material things? So as I keep talking about giving today, I do not mean exclusively about, like, for instance, giving $1, a $5 bill, $10 bill to the homeless or something like that, or toys to kids who are poor. Those are all material things. I want to transcend the thinking so that giving is not just material things like monetary value, like items, objects, but also things that have nothing to do with the material world, things that we can do that's perhaps more challenging than just handing a dollar bill over to the homeless. So, literally, I'm going to challenge you with that. If you can come up with some suggestions, please go ahead and type that in to GoToMeeting, and it will contribute to our discussion right here and right now. And for now, I'm going to present some of the things that occur to me. Number one, a smile. Doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to give anything to everyone, but can you give your beautiful smile to the people that you encounter? The smile is an open expression of goodwill. It's a projection of positive energy, and I'm willing to bet that you have no idea how great your smile is or how much good it will do the other people who see you smile. So that's number one. Number two, forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't cost any money. It's not an object that you have to hand off to someone else. But think about forgiveness in terms of both yourself and other people. When other people have done something wrong, you may be carrying quite a bit of anger within you. I can't believe they did that. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so mad. Now, if you carry that around, it's not going to do you any good. What I'm asking is if you can forgive. Give the gift of forgiveness. So you don't have to carry that anger around anymore. Now, that bad thing that someone has done, that someone may be yourself. And if so, it may not be anger that you carry around, it may be regret. You're remorseful. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, and you're just walking around carrying that regret with you all day long. I'm asking if you can give yourself the gift of forgiveness so you don't have to carry that regret around with you like a baggage. So, anger, regrets, they slow you down. They are heavy burdens. Let them go. Number 3, a blessing. Giving someone a blessing requires no monetary expenditure. You can do that anytime. So this is about wishing someone the best. Smooth sailing, good journey. Good fortune, may the wind be at your back. Safety, protection, drive safe. Be careful out there. Be careful on the road. These are all blessings that you can give, and they don't cost a single penny, but they can brighten someone up. And finally, last item, last suggestion, encouragement. So when people are on the right track, let them know, hey, way to go, keep going. Give them praise, sincere, specific praise. Hey, what you did there, I like that. That was really good. I enjoyed that. You can give them motivation. You can give them inspiration. These are all gifts that you can give that have nothing to do with material things. So, I have a great suggestion. We'll make that number 5. Number 5, well, maybe number 5 and number 6. We got some great suggestions here. Time and listening. And, I understand they could be together, but sometimes when you are giving your time, you're not listening. You could be doing something different. But giving your time is actually the thing that you have of the highest value. There's no amount of money, really, that can pay for time. You see that. Everybody sees that on their deathbed. At the end of this life, all the money in the world is not going to give you another day. So time is extremely precious, more precious than any amount of money. And lastly, listening, just lending your ear to someone. And we could go on and on. There's great suggestions coming in. Kindness. And, when someone's, in a hurry, in a rush, frantic, hey, come here. You can, why don't you here, you can cut in line here. I know you're in a big hurry. Giving someone compliment, like a praise, giving someone a smile. Boy, these are fantastic suggestions. I want to thank everyone. Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.